Hi, this is Blair Pleasant. I'm with my BCStrategies colleagues, and today we're going to have an interesting discussion. I recently posted something on LinkedIn. Basically, I said, let's talk about AI and empathy for CX. I've seen lots of discussions about the need for AI agents or virtual agents, whatever we're calling them these days, the need for them to be empathetic when interacting with customers. And it got me thinking, well, first, can AI actually be empathetic? Displaying what appears to be empathy, and I think the answer to that is no. But how can it display empathy without coming across as being fake and disingenuous? When a virtual agent or an AI agent responds with, "I'm sorry to hear you're having a problem," it's just fake, and it's kind of meaningless to me, and it actually pisses me off a little. So the post generated so much discussion and more comments than anything I've posted before, so it was really cool. And obviously I hit a nerve. So everyone agrees that since AI isn't human, it actually can't be empathetic, but it can be trained to display empathy and show empathy. And everyone also agrees that even human agents, they need to be trained in empathy in a lot of cases. And even when you hear a human agent say, "I'm sorry, to hear you're having that problem," again, it's like, are you really, or are you just reading from a script and you have to say that? So I just want to talk about empathy and what it means to us. Are we putting too much pressure on it? There's one contact vendor that basically made empathy the center of their marketing strategy. But maybe instead of empathy, we should be focusing more on delivering accurate and useful information and resolutions in a friendly tone and in a way that makes the customer feel comfortable and understood. I know a lot of the AI vendors are saying that their, Gen AI can display empathy in a way that makes customers feel heard and understood, and in some cases even better than human agents who get distracted, who are stressed, or maybe having a bad day. So let's talk about empathy, mainly with AI, but also with human agents. And does it matter? What should we be thinking about? What should we be looking for? So let's open this up to the group. Can AI be empathetic, and if so, should it? So Robert, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I have some thoughts on this, and I think we can look back at history because the real question is, can we display empathy in a machine? And if you look at the very first old answering machines, what do they say? They say, "Sorry, we missed your call." And so the caller perceives that the person who recorded that greeting is empathetic to them. They would have rather had the call during the day. So there's a level of empathy on very primitive voice technology. I think a good example, Melissa Swartz and I recently completed managing a project for a toll roads agency here in Southern California, and we put in a natural language voice bots, and they're very humanized. They say if somebody says something it doesn't understand, an utterance, it says, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you." And it would be very inelegant for it to say, "Invalid phrase, please try again." Or not even "please try again." Why would it say please? Because it's not human. Invalid phrase, try again. So we know that it's not the machine expressing empathy. In the case of the answering machine, it's the person behind it. And in the case of the voice bots, it's the company behind it. So people might roll their eyes at all these empathetic phrases, but they're going to really miss them if they're not there. I've seen flows like that. It's terrible, and it doesn't sound natural, and it doesn't make you want to talk to it. And the fact is, the people behind it with these voice bots, we really are sorry we didn't understand what they were saying. We put a lot of work into trying to understand anything the caller might want. So of course, that's a genuine empathetic statement that the voice bot is conveying. So that's my first thought about it. Yes, there should be a display of empathy in machines, but it's either the person who is communicating through it, or it's the company behind it that is conveying it. And I think that when we say the company behind it, that gets into more about empathy than just the voice technology and the bots. If it's the company that's behind the empathy, we can do a lot more than just the words. And I've done some work with Dr. Natalie Peterhoff. She wrote Empathy in Action for Genesis, along with the president of Genesis. And she gives an example of a client she had, DoorDash, where they modified the human agent responses when an order was wrong. And instead of this big apology, or questions, or "we strive to do better and provide the utmost service," and blah, 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 the agents were empowered to immediately issue a refund and a reorder. And so their first reply was, they did say, we apologize. I can reorder that for you right away. No questions. It resulted in lower talk times, which is money savings, less friction for the agents, which is a better agent or employee experience, and higher customer satisfaction. They didn't want to hear how great DoorDash was most of the time. They wanted to get their order as quickly as possible. What they were ready to eat, right? So the empathy was really put into the workflow, and it showed. I think one of your comments said empathy is only empathy if the customer perceives it as such, and that's so true, right? It doesn't have to be just words that you say. It can be how you handle their complaint. And really, when things go wrong, that's the true test of whether a company, a customer service desk, or anything else is showing empathy. It's in the policy, not in like this sweet talk on the telephone. It doesn't have to be all the time. But back to the idea of AI and machines, yes, I think that we should try to make them a human-like interaction. We know we're not fooling anyone. We're not trying to fool anyone, or we shouldn't be, at least. And nonetheless, I think it makes it a more natural conversation and a more pleasant one.
Okay, so we have one vote for AI. Yes, it should display empathy if it's done right and it handles the issue correctly. So yes, I like that. Tom, how about you? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've got two, and Robert just stole one of them. So next time I got to make sure I jump in front of Robert. And we don't always agree, Robert. So it's kind of crazy that you would steal one of my points. But it has to do with the notion of this empowerment versus empathy. And you said it. I think the thing that frustrates me is when I see, and I remember I was calling into Verizon a lot back when I was consulting, and people would say, "Oh, we're so sorry you have this problem. You know, if I had this problem and the bill was wrong, you know, I would be upset too." And you're like, "Well, thank you." And then they're like, "Unfortunately, we don't do that in this department, so I'm gonna have to transfer you." And then they would transfer you, and you would get the same. You talked to enough agents where you realize that was their training, you know, and they were trained very, very well on how to be empathetic, and they sounded empathetic. They sounded genuine. You could tell they probably, you know, role played this and, you know, been trained on it. And it was nice until you realized I would rather them just say, "Your bill's wrong. Okay, we'll fix it. Thanks," and hang up. I mean, that would be a lot better because then it's just fixed. But they're not empowered. And to Robert's point, if you just empower them to just fix it, you know, it's ultimately probably going to cost the company less money in the long term when you look at the cost of kicking that can down the road or just sucking up time trying to make them feel better. Just take care of their problem. And so I think empathy, yeah, there's a role it plays, but if you're not empowering your agents, if you're not getting the nuts and bolts of CX right, empathy doesn't help. In fact, it can make it worse. So it's kind of the cherry on top of the CX sundae. You know, it does kind of tie it off into a really nice dessert, but you can get by without it. But, you know, if that's all it is, it's just a cherry, then, you know, you're missing out. That's my one point. And I do think that there can be the illusion of empathy, Blair. I mean, you kind of said, well, computers can't be empathetic, but it can create the illusion that they are. Right. And we kind of buy into that. And there's a couple things that it does. Number one is it kind of de-escalates something. So if something's a little bit more empathetic, a little more calming, the customer's less likely to get just worked up and amped up. And I'll give you an example. I kind of saw the opposite of empathy from AI just today. So I was playing around with Apple Intelligence on my new iPhone, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to see how well it can, you know, compose an email. Just, you know, talking to Siri, hey, I need to compose an email. And it's like, okay, who do you want to send the message to? And I told it, it got it wrong, and I repeated, and it says, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." And I was like, "You're an idiot." And I've said that, and it was still listening. And because I'm thinking all this AI, and you can't even send an email. Like I said, "You're an idiot," and it immediately said, "That's not nice." And so that's the opposite of empathy, right? Now it's correct. I wasn't nice, so it did a great job of understanding. It didn't hallucinate that I wasn't nice. I actually was not nice. It picked up on that sentiment that I was communicating. So it wasn't wrong, but it just pissed me off even more. Like, first you can't do it, and now you're talking back. And I realized, you know, there's been a lot of talk about how bad Apple Intelligence is so far. And I'm like, well, I found the one thing it does really well. It's really good at talking back. So that, you know, but if it had said, for instance, hey, I get it. You know, I haven't been at this AI thing very long. I'm learning every day. You know, hopefully next time I can exceed your expectations about what I can do, you would have been like, okay, just keep at it, keep learning, let's go, let's get better. I'm good. Instead, I'm like, that's not nice. That's where we're at now. And I want to go, you're not nice. And then I posted this on LinkedIn, and it brought up a little bit like, should we be nice to AI? It's it's one thing for it to be nice to us, but is it keeping score? And can you get a better response with AI if you're nice to it? Do we need to show empathy to our AI assistants? It brought up some really interesting discussion, and I'm thinking about maybe I need to apologize to the AI and say, I'm sorry I called you an idiot, and can we be friends, and will you not kill me when robots take over the world? And we'll see. I'll report back on what happens when I apologize to AI.
You can apologize, or you can just reset it. It's up to you. You're in control as of this date and time. I
feel like I'm on The View and I need to read a statement, I previously
I almost said
idiot, and
I almost said I'm sorry to butt back in, but I'm actually not. But that's like my habit. But but what Tom said
fake
reminded me.
Fake empathy.
Okay, what Tom said reminded me of an experience I had just yesterday. I use Auto Club for my vehicle registration, and they had put Roberto Harris instead of Robert Harris when I did it, and I've been meaning to get back there, so I had some other business, and I went up to the desk where they do the registration, and I showed the woman, and she immediately went, "That's great." She actually thought it was hilarious and kind of made fun of it, and then she said, "They're trying to make you a Latino," and it was kind of like a little bit teasing and funny and stuff, but then she was like so good at getting it changed. It was like such a seamless process that it's like she had that leverage. But that's the kind of interaction that there's no way that you could train a machine to do. She'd have to read, rightfully or wrongfully, whether I was the kind of person that, that could be like, it was actually really funny, right? Roberto Lee Harris, but, she had to read whether I was the kind of person who would, like that kind of engagement. And then she also had to be good at her job fixing it, because then it would have been just like, that would have become part of the complaint, right? But yeah, so there's a good example where the natural human interaction, there's just too many variables with facial expressions and posture and everything else to where you can't do that over an AI system, even if it had access to all of those modes of communication at once. It's just too many variables.
Yep. So it sounds like empathy with empowerment and the ability to take action is really the right thing. And I've got an example from a few years ago that I've used this a couple times in webinars and things, but it was right after one of the wildfires near where I live, and we had a lot of smoke damage in the house. It just smelled really bad of the smoke from nearby house that burned down. So I called my insurance company, and the woman the live human agent who I spoke to is absolutely awesome and, very empathetic, but she was also empowered. And she told me that they have this new, the insurance company was trying out a new vendor that does smoke mediation, and would I like to try it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she was really invested in it. Like she would call me back, a couple weeks later and find out how it was. And there's no way an AI is going to do that. So the AI might be empathetic and say, we can cover your claim or whatever, but there's no way they're going to say, oh, we've got a new vendor, that we'd like to try out, would you be interested? So there's still a lot of things that humans can do that the AI just will not be able to do if ever, but for a long, long time. So Melissa, how about you? What are some of your thoughts on AI and empathy?
Well, I think if I had to choose between empathy and empowerment, I would go with empowerment. I mean, as long as they're polite, I want my problem resolved. And I want that more than I want them to say, oh, that's awful. I want them to say, I'll get that fixed for you. So there may be personality types different from mine where the empathy really matters. And I don't want to, say that there's a blanket statement that it always, that empathy doesn't matter. But I'm the kind of person, when I get in a queue and it says, your call is very important to me, I'm going, no, it's not. No. just BS. Quit telling me that. If it was important, you'd answer it right away. So,
that'd be a great name for a podcast. I'm just saying.
good idea.
Yeah.
You ever do
I don't know why I
that,
haven't
Tom?
thought of that.
But so I'm irritated by fake empathy, and I really just want the results. So I would much rather have somebody say, a robot or a person say, "This is how we're going. Let's get this fixed," than to say, "Oh, I'm really sorry," and I wouldn't like that either. I mean, to me, it's like, I don't need your fakeness. I just want a result. I do think there are people who probably do need empathy more. And I think that you don't want to bypass those people. And so you end up kind of in a tightrope of having to have some level of empathy to actually meet the needs of the people who really, really want it. But at the same time, I placed an order with an online company and was waiting for it to come in. And it was, I don't know, like 2 weeks out. And I got an email from them and they said, "Oh, we're sorry that we messed up your order, but do you believe in second chances?" And I'm like, "My order's messed up? I didn't even know my order was messed up," because it was, inside the deadline of when I was supposed to get it. And all they were talking about is, "Well, we want you to order from us again." I'm like, what? Yeah. I mean, you messed up my order, but hey, and there wasn't even like a coupon or anything else. It was just like, "Oh, please order from us again." What the heck? I mean, so back to Tom's point, you have to have the entire process figured out. You can't just add empathy here and there and call it good. So those are my thoughts.
I think too, human empathy is going to become more important because if you've gone through self-service and you've gone through an AI agentic experience and you still need an agent, then you're really going to need some empathy because you're probably going to be you're going to be escalating to a point of anger that you're going to need someone to kind of calm you down a little bit probably, and to the best way to do that is to show some empathy, and so it may become, because as the menial tasks become totally automated, the more as agents get more and more up the tiers as far as support, empathy, I think, will be more, human empathy will be more important than ever.
Yep, absolutely. And we're still definitely lacking in human empathy in many, many cases. So, Kevin, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit the discussion's gone a little bit off the rails in terms of, the original question is, can AI express empathy, right? So we talked about when empathy should be used. And I think everybody, Melissa, you said, when you call and it says your call is very important to us, and then you're on hold for 30 minutes, like that's humans recording a message that wasn't the right use of empathy, right? So I think if we want to circle back to, from my perspective, can AI express empathy? It can do it as well as humans can. And I think that, it's very easy to have what I'll consider a human bias. Humans like to believe that humans are creative and AI can't be creative. Well, studies that the Boston Consulting Group and others have done have shown that, AI is actually better at creativity than humans. Why? How do we think we're creative? We're creative because of all of our experiences. AI can have broader experiences. If you had an agent that had taken 10 calls, or an agent taken 100 calls, or an agent who had taken 10,000 calls, who do you think is going to be a better agent in terms of reading the situation? It's going to be the agent with more experience. And AI agents that are trained, just like we as humans are trained on empathy, maybe in kindergarten, your friend drops their cookie and your teacher says, "Oh, Kevin, why don't you share your cookie with them?" to express empathy. We're all trained on empathy. And my belief is AI can be as accurate and as empathetic, whether it's real or fake. We can't tell when humans do it. They want our business, right? They want us to place the next order, so they're saying the right thing, whether they're doing it, you know, intentionally with emotions or because of a script. And I'll tell you, I took AI for a spin. DeepSeek is a big thing this week. So I took Deep DeepSeek and ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini and Claude, and I said, "Hey, I'm having a bad day. What would you suggest?" And I'm going to tell you, if you do this, you're going to get some terrific empathic answers, but also some great things. Copilot said, "I'm sorry to hear you're having a tough day. Sometimes a little distraction or change of pace can help. Here are a few suggestions." Gave me 5 suggestions. DeepSeek gave me 10 suggestions, was great. Then I said, "Hey, none of these seem to work for me." And it said, "Hey, sometimes that's okay. Would you want to talk about what's causing it?" I mean, I'm going to tell you that it was more empathic and knowledgeable, the empowered piece, it knew, than I would say 99% of the friends that I could reach out to. And it was infinitely patient. I said, "You know what, I'm just feeling blah." And it said, "Hey, yeah, sometimes we always have that." And, DeepSeek at the end, was saying, "Hey, if you need professional help, here's the suicide prevention hotline." And, so it was in different countries as well, right? So all of them not only demonstrated empathy because they're trained on, probably therapy and things to do if somebody, but they had some very concrete, um, things that they, has suggested. And, I think, Robert, you said there's no way that AI can look at all the modalities, the video, the facial expressions and what have you. Um, maybe today, but I think that there's evidence to suggest even today they might be able to do that. But certainly, a year from now, I don't know why we believe as humans we can read all the facial nuances better than some kind of trained systems, right? So I think that what you all raised was empathy without empowerment. Like, you can't just say, "Oh, I feel so bad for you," goodbye. Um, but that's not whether AI can be empathic. I think it can. And, I mean, Robert and Melissa, with your system, I really loved where you started because behind that was a human intent that wanted to provide the right answer, right? And I think that if the AI systems are trained correctly, which they seem to be, they are generally trying to, help you kind of solve that. So I'd say AI can be empathic as humans, and now it's just around, whether us humans can apply it properly. So with that, back to you, Blair.
Okay, yeah, and you bring up some great points. And based on the LinkedIn discussion, I had a couple people from Crescendo, which provides Gen AI and CX capabilities. They are totally, saying, Gen AI can conduct, conversations in a way that can be or can appear to be more empathetic than agents. And even though the software itself isn't empathetic, it feels to the consumer that it's empathetic. And that's what's important, is how does it make the customer or the person on the other end feel? And and Kevin, to your point, it can definitely, make the consumer, the customer, whoever, feel like they're interacting with someone that understands them and is listening and can help them. And again, and even more so than agents who might be tired, they might be stressed. We know AI can, work a gazillion hours and it's not going to get tired. Whereas agents, they can have a bad day and it can come out, you know, we've all had interactions with, live agents where it's like, you can tell they're having a bad day. That's not going to happen with AI. Um, so Kevin, in your interaction that you were just talking about, did you feel that it was genuine and sincere, or does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, and this is the thing. The intent, my belief in communication is it's not the intent that matters, it's how it's received. So like I can have great
Mm-hmm.
intentions and I say something that upsets you because I didn't realize that was, a triggering thing. And I can't go back and say, well, my intent was good. And I think that, so I think, people say, well, AI can't have true empathy. But once again, that's the intent. It's the reception of it. And what I would say
Yeah.
is all of this, it had great suggestions. And when I said, hey, you know what? none of those suggestions, seem like they're going to work. Um, and then like it would come up and say, all right, let's try some more active approaches, maybe do some physical movement or what have you, right? And I said, well, well, I just feel blah. And it just said, okay, those blah days can be really tough. And remember, these feelings are temporary. And so, truthfully, if there was a human on the other side typing that, I would have said, wow, that human really gets me. Like it really is like, hey, can I help you just take a little step, right? Um, so yeah, I felt that it was both knowledgeable and it was responding in a way that, was going to help me actually feel less like a bad day, right? And what I loved is in Claude, it gives titles to your chat, right? And which I thought this was just brilliant. So I said, "Hey, I'm having a bad day," and it titled the chat uh, "Lightening Your Mood on a Tough Day." Like it just came up with that title for the so that was kind of like the intent that it was expressing. That was what it was trying to do. So it came across very well. I would suggest all of you try that because I think that it is an amazing experience just to go and have that conversation.
One thing I was thinking about too with when you talk about intent, so an agent's intent of expressing empathy is not to care for me or to
Right.
to let me know that they really care. Their intent is to increase their sentiment analysis and to get me off the phone as quickly as possible so it affects their score. So that's their intent, and or to get some kind of award because they showed empathy on 85% of their calls. So like the intent, I think it's an interesting thing. Does it matter with AI? And it's a little bit too of the bar's pretty low. Like we we think it has to be great. It's like if it's just kind of polite,
Yeah.
that's probably enough. Because we don't even get polite in a lot of our CX interactions. So,
But wait a second, Tom, when you call in, AI is going to say, wait a second, are you that Tom that called one of our AIs an idiot? And you're
well,
going to be
We know you.
goodbye.
well, and I think, and I hope where we end up is, and it's something that both Melissa and Robert kind of touched on a little bit, where Melissa says, "Well, this is my personality. I'm more to the point," and Robert talked about his kind of quirky sense of humor, and like AI not knowing that. Well, I think when we get to the point where we have our own personal AI that's interacting with these other AIs on our behalf, it absolutely could. And it could absolutely get that information, and kind of be a little middleman or middle AI for you so that it comes back and it's like, okay, Melissa, this is what you asked for. Bing, bang, boom, and then with a little kind of funny sense of humor for Robert to, because it does know him. It does kind of know what he thinks is funny and is kind of, irreverent or not irreverent.
It'll call him Roberto.
It'll call him Roberto from now on. Yeah,
there you
calls him
go. Yeah.
Roberto.
A simple thing was like a couple of the AIs,
Great.
like ChatGPT and Claude, like when I said, "Hey, I'm having a bad day," like Pi.ai, which was another one I used, that was created by Mustafa Suleyman, who's now the president of AI for Microsoft, and really that was created to be, have EQ, so to be empathic. I mean, it started by saying, "Hi, Kevin, I'm sorry to hear you're having a bad day." So it used my first name in addressing me. And, the truth is I was signed into all of the services, right? So they all knew my first name and whatever, but only a couple of them chose to do that, right? But that right away created, I would say to me, it just created a better feel. Like, it's like, oh, hey, there's addressing me by first name. And, it felt like it kind of knew me. So to your point, Tom, I think that AI will be better than humans in knowing exactly whether to use humor or to just get down and solve the problem, right? So this is what I think the future is. And I think that I'd like to believe humans are special with empathy or creativity, but I don't know that there's evidence to suggest that. I think we're all just trained based on our experiences. So I think AI is going to do some things that are interesting and surprise us all as we go forward.
Well,
I
and I
read
think
an,
it also comes down to, what's the purpose of the interaction with the AI? If we're talking about CX and, wanting to get information or a resolution, then that's one thing, then we were talking about, the empowerment is more important than the empathy in some cases. If you're talking about, having a conversation or, you know, like Kevin, your example, wanting some advice or whatever, that's a little different. That's where you really do want that empathy. So different situations are going to call for different levels, I guess, of empathy and, understanding. So I think we're going to see lots of different use cases and lots of iterations of, where empathy comes into play, what its role is, where it makes sense, where it doesn't. And again, eventually, based on the situation and the individual, what's the right level? Do you want humor? Do you want warmth? So I think that's going to be, I'd say a few years away, but things are moving so quickly, it could be a year away for all we know. But I think that's the ultimate goal, is to identify, the individual and what they want and what their personality is. And they've been trying to do that with matching with live agents,
Right.
matching personality. So definitely doing that with AI agents, I think, can be a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think just to from my perspective, if the question is can AI be empathetic, the answer is absolutely yes. Can it be misapplied? Yes, like all these technologies, it could be
Mhm.
misapplied. So, it's not a question of what AI can do. It's a question of, will us humans that are implementing it, will we put it in the right, will we give it the right rules? Will we can't say be super empathetic, but give it, but don't allow it to actually solve any of the customer problems, right? So when we went into this, if people are wondering, can it be as empathetic as humans? My answer is absolutely yes, if not more so, because it actually is trained on a better data set than maybe any of us individual humans.
Yeah,
And
you actually, I'm sorry, you raise a good point with CX. I've known of live agents that get very good CSAT scores, but they take half as many calls as anyone else because they're so empathetic and they spend so much time working through the problem. Well, that's showing empathy to the caller that's online, but not all the people that are on hold, right? It's kind of a balance there of
Right.
efficiency. AI, you don't have that same issue unless you'd have to have a large volume before you were really constrained by that.
And Melissa, you wanted to add something?
about 10 years ago, I read a novel, and part of the novel was set in China, and one of the characters was leading some sort of revolution against the system. Her mother was elderly, and it was set in the future, and the mother had a robotic AI companion, and the robotic AI companion was with this mother all the time. And as part of it told the mother what was going on in the world, and about how bad the insurgents were and how awful they were, and was controlling the news and the access and the worldview that it gave to its companion. And so the daughter would visit the mother, and the mother's like, "Oh, these insurgents are horrible," and the daughter's like, "I'm the head of the insurgency, and you don't even know that." So it can go a long way. I mean, a little bit of the dark side there, but talking about AI and how it can be used to manipulate people, something to think about. Hopefully down the road. Hopefully not
Yeah, and
next year.
that was something that Joseph sent a note. He wasn't able to be on this call, but he wanted to add in that there's an increasing body of instances where cyber criminals are using empathy-infused AI to defraud and manipulate vulnerable people. And this is downright scary, as bots have infinite patience to cultivate people. So that's probably something for another podcast, but that's a whole other, thing that's, going to be happening. So yes, AI can be as empathetic as humans, but we might have to, be careful what you ask for. So, well, we should wrap it up here. So thank you to my BCStrategies experts. This has been great. I love that we're getting these podcasts back on track. And so keep looking on LinkedIn for our podcasts. I think they're informative and fun. And if anyone has any ideas for what you'd like to hear from us, shoot us a message and, post on LinkedIn and let us know what you'd like us to talk about, because we're definitely open to suggestions. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.